is WAVE-TV Louisville. From Kentucky's first television station, this is WAVE-TV News at 6 with Alan Denton, Jackie Hayes, meteorologist John Belsky, and Bob Dominy Sports.
I think for a minute we all thought, you know, this is it. It's over.
A harrowing experience for 3 people as the hot air balloon they're riding in plunges toward the ground. Good evening. The terrifying ride took place as thousands of people headed to work this morning.
A little after 8 o'clock, the balloon crashed into potentially deadly power lines along Interstate 64 east of the Watterson Expressway. WAVE-TV News reporter Craig Hoffman was the first television reporter at the crash site. He joins us now live from Baptist Hospital East, where the victims were taken. Craig?
Jackie, there's no doubt balloon pilot Mike Kirk and his passengers, John Ramsey and Deborah Sheehan, are very lucky. They've been admitted to Baptist Hospital East for observation tonight. A few hours ago, though, they got the scare of their lives. The hot air balloon they were in made an emergency landing and crashed into some high-voltage power lines.
And everything looked fine, and we got, clearance from Stanford Field, and weather forecasted okay, and everything moved in kind of quick. So he saw the field and said, we better go down before we hit lightning.
Louisville radio personality John Ramsey describes the frantic seconds before this early times hot air balloon he's in sails into power lines. One motorist thinks he sees a large billboard topple in front of him. Another witness sees sparks shoot into the air. Homeowner Dan Dant hears a thunderous pop.
The wind kicked up pretty good. It was moving pretty good. It looked like it just shoved him right back down into that top line. When he hit, there was a big explosion, loud pop, big ball of flame, and then they just sort of held on.
One by one, rescue crews lower the crash victims to safety. Nervous family and friends look on. Just before the crash, Ramsey told his radio station he's going down.
I feel a little sore. I'm just glad to be here, and thanks to all the listeners, because they said the radio station, that Oldies 103 had a lot of people calling in and concerned, and I'm just lucky. I'm real lucky, thank God.
For more than an hour, Ramsey and another passenger, Deborah Sheehan, wait inside the basket.
I just thank God it wasn't my time to go.
Sheehan is terrified. She waits and watches as pilot Mike Kirk helps rescue crews get them down.
And we said, we're okay if they can just get here before the wind comes and gives us too much momentum, or if LG&E can get off the electricity, we'll be just fine.
A half hour before the crash, Kirk takes off from a field 5 miles away. He's banged up, burned, and bruised, and very thankful to be alive.
It looks like, I ought to be back on my feet in just a day or so, and looking forward to flying in the Derby balloon race. We just got to patch the balloon together.
Pilot Mike Kirk says he knows some other pilots involved in similar crashes, and they came out far more seriously injured. I talked to several police officers and emergency crews at the scene, Jackie, and they say it's a miracle all 3 walked away from this with burns and bruises, and of course they're here for observation at Baptist Hospital East to be continually treated.
And Craig, it's certainly something those folks will never forget, and a lot of other people, because it tied up traffic for hours, literally hours. It
did tie up traffic between about 8:15 or so to about 12:30 on Interstate 64 East, and all the ramps leading to that made a lot of hectic waiting for people on rush hour traffic this morning. But again, I'm sure all those motorists don't mind the delays here with this outcome. 3 people survived. It could have been a lot worse, Jackie.
A good ending. All right, thanks, Craig. Before the 3 balloon passengers made it safely to the ground, many people risked their lives.
Some are ordinary citizens who stepped into danger without anyone asking. Others are professionals who rose to great heights for a daring rescue. WAVE-TV News reporter Paul Adrian brings us the story of heroism.
The first people at the accident were not highly trained emergency workers. The first to arrive were just regular people who stopped, grabbed a line, and risked their lives to help stabilize the dangling airship.
He dropped me that line. He said, "Don't let go," and I didn't. And the police said, Jefferson County Police said, "Get away, those lines come down, you're dead." And I couldn't leave him. I wouldn't want nobody leaving me up there,
The amateur rescuers say the pilot amazed them with his bravery. He left the gondola to tie it to the top power line.
The pilot, I guess, he's got a lot of guts. He climbed out on that line, and I don't know how it didn't shock him.
Professional rescuers say that main line carries 138,000 volts, but the wreck caused it to lose power, protecting the accident victims. If they had touched any other lines, electrocution would have come instantaneously. Other dangers? They could have fallen to certain injury, or the balloon's 2 propane tanks could have erupted.
Should a basket fall, that stuff is very, very volatile. It burns at very high degrees, and it could have been an explosion.
But all the dangerous could-have-beens were avoided. LG&E workers cut power to the lines, then rescuers went up in a cherry picker to retrieve the victims from their perilous height one by one and bring them down safely for a reunion with loved ones. In Louisville, Paul Adrian, WAVE 3 News.
As we told you earlier, throughout most of the rescue effort, police closed I-64. But when those first brave heroes arrived, the highway was open and cars thundered past. Another danger they faced willingly.
After this morning's rescue, a number of people wondered if all this could have been avoided, if the balloon should have just stayed on the ground. WAVE 3's Mark Pettinger joins us now from the newsroom to help answer those questions. Mark?
Jackie, ballooning is a tricky business and not without risks, as we saw today. Balloonists say conditions are always changing. What looks like good weather for ballooning can often turn to be dangerous, and what looks like bad weather can also be equally deceiving. To fly or not to fly? It starts by using a small balloon to see which way the wind's blowing.
What we do is we take a compass reading off of the pie ball and what direction it goes.
According to pilot Bob Boswell, this helps determine if the wind will carry the balloon and gondola on a safe path to a good landing spot.
It's a line of thunderstorms 20 miles wide, moving to the northeast at 30 knots.
Pilots also depend on weather information from the FAA's Flight Service Office. Hot air balloonists need to pay close attention to changing conditions.
They are very susceptible to stronger surface winds and low-level turbulence and those type of things, more so than fixed-wing aircraft.
According to pilot Mike Kirk, this morning's weather report indicated he had 2.5 hours before a line of thunderstorms arrived in Louisville.
Took off and began the flight and noticed off on the west end of Louisville as clouds were darkening up, and made a call into flight service because sometimes the clouds will darken up and it's not really that big of a deal.
But the radar indicated severe weather rapidly approaching. That's why Kirk tried to bring the balloon back down. Pilots say during spring thunderstorms, it's always touch and go.
A lot of times you can get flights off in front of something like that, and a lot of times it's good weather behind it.
Now, determining if the weather was a factor will be left to the FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board. The FAA has already forwarded part of its investigation to the NTSB, and Jackie, will be up to them to determine the cause of today's crash and if balloon pilot Mike Kirk followed the rules.
Mark, any idea how long it could take before we get the results back?
Well, a spokesperson at the FAA who I spoke to said the NTSB tends to grind their wheels, so he said it could take anywhere from 6 months to a year for them to get a report out. They've already made part of their findings and forwarded it on, as I mentioned.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
And weather conditions are, of course, crucial to any pilot's flight plan.
WAVE 3's John Belsky is the official meteorologist of the Great Balloon Race, and he joins us now with some safety tips.
All right, and of course, this is the time of year everyone always pays close attention to the balloons, but the trickiest part is the landing and the takeoff, and that's where the weather conditions, the wind plays a big factor. Now, here's how it stands for the Great Balloon Race, and basically for any balloon ride. The winds have to be less than 12 miles per hour, which happened this morning, and no rain in the air. Of course, at takeoff, we had no rain, and the balloon flights always take place early morning or late afternoon or evening because the winds are at their lightest. You go in the middle of the day, you get a lot of thermals, a lot of mixing winds. Now, what happened, we had this big line of thunderstorms coming off Texas last night, and this morning it sped up rapidly through Kentucky. Boom, it went right through and blew right through here. And, of course, as Mike said, he had a 2.5-hour clearance before the winds came in, before the storms came in, but we did pick up some gusty winds aloft out ahead of that line of storms as it sped up, and he wasn't able to get a chance to get down there. Very tricky, but, you know, the springtime, things can happen just like that.
That's right.
It sure did.
Yeah. All right, thanks, John. Okay.
And other